Well, I'll start off with I got good news and bad news. So I was going to share. One of you guys wanted to pick which one you want first, the good or the bad. Bad news first. Bad news is it might be a little bit hot out there today. So the good news is you guys don't have to ride buses to practice today. So you get to stay at home and play at your home field. And we do too. So we're really excited about that part. We will be outside today, so I'm excited to see how the guys respond because a lot of our off-season conditioning has been in whatever 70 to 80 degree weather inside. We try to keep the indoor warm, but it hadn't been this warm. So it'll be exciting to see how they respond to going outside and having to practice out in the heat. But we're excited to get back on the field. We got a lot of competition, as you guys well know, a lot of position battles. Like to think we've got more players that can help us from a depth standpoint at this time than we did last year. Obviously, the offensive line is going to be a kind of play-by-position deal. We're going to be rotating some guys, musical chairs, through the depth chart. A lot of competition at that position. What you see one day will probably not be what you see the next because we got a lot of guys to rotate and move around to try to figure out the center guards and tackle positions. A lot of other positions, there'll be great competition, and we're excited about that competition. You know, I've talked to the players extensively about sustainable focus because that seems to be with a young team, especially the group we had last year, a lot of freshmen and sophomores playing, their ability to focus for long periods of time, 1 hour meeting, 2 hour practice. That's a big emphasis for us is to continue that. Usually the first day that's not a problem, but as spring goes and gets along, a lot of guys can get complacent. You worry about guys saying, okay, well, I had my job last year, so I've got my job again this year. It's not the way it's going to be for us. We're going to challenge them to compete every day, and the players that block, tackle, do the things fundamentally well will be the guys who we're able to play. Obviously, we've got some areas we got to improve on, starting with the special teams. That's a big emphasis for us in all the kicking units. And then red area and offense and defense, red area, we're going to try to target those areas, do a little extra. A lot of situational football where we put guys in situations and say, go play, to try to put them in those situations that you can't simulate sometimes in scrimmages. That's a big part of it. But we are excited, very pleased with the off-season conditioning program they've had thus far, and we'll see how that equates to 85-degree weather today.
Kirby, just to go back with the offensive line, do you have an idea of what you're going to open camp with and just further expand on how often that might rotate and what you hope to see out of that group?
Well, I hope to see a lot of guys that have been in the background come to the forefront. I mean, obviously we've got a group coming in the fall that's not currently here that we think will provide depth and provide competition. We'd love to have some of those guys here right now, but we don't. So as it begins today, Lamont's going to start out. He's going to play the center position. Dashawn will work in there. Isaiah Wynn will work at tackle, although he'll keep swinging and doing the things he's done in the past. That right guard spot is really just completely up for grabs. We'll have somebody out there today. It may be Solomon. It may be Ben Cleveland. We'll have some guys rolling there at that right guard spot. And then right tackle, Bynum's going to start out there with DeMarcus Hayes working with the other group. But obviously there's a lot of guys that, like Pat Allen has had a good offseason. Sam Madden's had a better offseason. So we're hoping that those guys, Chris Barnes is the guy we're going to look at, and he's going to play a little center. Dashawn will play a little center. Dashawn's the one guy that we feel like has played all three positions in practices, so he'll continue to do that. But it'll be musical chairs, and there'll be a lot of guys involved in that. Sage will be involved in that as well.
Hey, keeping that theme, get the bad out of the way first, we really haven't heard from you on the reasons that Tracy Rocker was dismissed. Now we know that it was a termination. And then obviously tell us what you can about Trey Scott and whether we might have a chance to meet him.
Yeah, with Rocker, that's usually a personnel issue, which I chose to keep in-house. With Trey, looking forward, I'm excited about what Trey's been able to do. He brings a lot of energy to our team, enthusiasm to the practices. Trey's a guy that I've known for a while now and think he does a great job. And he'll continue to develop our young defensive line, and we'll continue to move forward with him. But we're very pleased with what he's done in the offseason, the energy he's brought to the conditioning program.
Obviously, some attrition at the quarterback spot in terms of depth with both Bryce, and then we hear the news about Parker. Any ideas in terms of how you guys are going to roll with that in the spring? Like maybe do you bump a guy over there to get some looks?
bump a guy. No, we got 3 quarterbacks in the spring. I mean, obviously those 3 guys will be working. Sam will be working with Jacob and Jake, and we're excited about the work that we've been able to get in with them right now through meetings. They've been doing some 7-on-7 on their own. Biggest concern there, yeah, we have depth issue. We got some really good preferred type walk-on guys coming in the fall. We don't have another signee obviously coming in, and that's something that we've got to address in the upcoming year's recruiting class. But from a standpoint of development or arms, I'm more concerned about being able to get functionality at practice when you have 3 quarterbacks. We don't really have a person to move over there. We got a couple guys who've played high school quarterback, but they play other positions for us now, and we don't want to sacrifice that. So we'll continue to work the way we got those 3 guys. They'll get a lot of work. That's the good thing. And we'll probably have some help out there with us just to throw balls and get some things done.
Yeah, Kirby, obviously a lot of people, particularly on the outside, measure things in terms of wins and losses.
Yep.
If you win, everything worked. If you lost, nothing worked. As the most inside of the people in this building, can you compare where you are right now this spring going in compared to what you were going into spring last year, sort of quantify the differences? Then I'll have a follow-up.
I think it's really hard to quantify where you are now compared to then. I do think from a standpoint of our system, we're in a much better place, because you can imagine this time last year, defense had a little carryover, probably 60 to 75% carryover, but offensively there was a lot of new terminology. So I feel like the carryover is much better, being that Jacob's in year 2. It's his second time hearing a lot of things. There's some changes within those things that we're going to do different this spring to try to challenge him and the rest of the offense to pick things up and be able to play in space and make some plays in space. But when it comes to wins and losses or quantifying this guy to that guy, it's really hard to judge until you go out on that field and you have practices, and you see where they are right now as compared to where they were against TCU.
And then, sorry, just as a quick follow-up, as you sort of reflected, obviously there's self-evaluation, but as you reflected on your first year, was there anything in particular that stood out to you of something that worked or didn't work, or I thought we could zig when we should have zagged, or whatever? Something that
Well, I certainly don't think we were as productive on the special teams as we should have been. I don't think that we had based on our talent level, to be where we were. We've got to evaluate and say, okay, are we kicking it high enough? Are we kicking it far enough? Did we punt it well enough? Did we cover it right? I think you're always trying to be introspective about those units, but when the stats come up that don't lie, you've got to work on that area. That's the part that I think the biggest improvement's got to be shown. Then obviously offensively, scoring more points and being able to score in the red area is critical.
Kirby, what's Marshall Long's availability this spring, and the transfer from Columbia? What do you expect he'll bring? And then if anything on the specialist, if you can share with the kickers, I mean.
Yeah, Marshall will be out there. He's not cleared to kick in 11-on-11 situations. We think by the end of spring he'll be punting, but we don't know if he'll be punting in a competitive environment. And then Cameron, we're excited about. I haven't really been able to see him do anything yet. Today will be our first chance to see him kick, talking about the transfer. And we'll have a couple other guys out there competing as well. And we plan on putting those guys in a lot of situations to kick in pressure situations, trying to simulate what they would get in the fall. But I am excited to see where the punters are with the guys we've got to see if we can improve as far as distance and hang.
Yeah, Kirby, a quick 2-part question. First on McCole Hardman, do you anticipate him seeing any snaps on offense? And number 2, as far as the star position goes, with obviously Mo being gone, who are you going to be looking at that position this spring?
Yeah, really good questions. Miko, we have a plan for. We want to get some offensive snaps and be able to expose him to some of the concepts, but it won't be early in spring. We're committed to continue to develop him as a corner. He's a guy that's going to be working mostly in our 2 deep. With our depth at DB with some of the guys that left. So we need him there. We need him to develop there, and we'll find out in the fall when we get some more depth in how much we need him versus offense. But, with spring, you have an ability to meet a little longer, and that's what I talk about with sustainable focus. Guys like Miko, can they handle extra meeting time at another position so that they can learn what to do and develop so we can maybe utilize some of his skills? We're certainly going to try to do that in the return game. So if we can do that in the return game, then it may carry over to the offensive side. As far as star, it's going to be done by committee as well, because we think in the secondary we've got quite a few guys coming back. We got a couple guys with a lot of experience in the secondary, It doesn't necessarily mean they're great players, but they've got a lot of experience. They've played for a long time here. So we're going to have a person, the star position is unique in college football. That's become a starter. That's become I think Mo played 80-something% of our snaps last year. So he might be playing more than every D lineman on our team. But you need a big physical body out there because so many of the plays are on the perimeter. So we're going to have several guys. Tyreek McGee work there. He'll continue to work there. D'Angelo Gibbs will work there. Richard LeCount will work there. We're going to have several guys where even Malcolm Parrish will go in there and go some. So we try to teach things by concept and not specific to a position so that guys can interchange, and we'll do that this spring.
Yes, about punter. As far as place kicker, I guess there's somebody coming in. I assume you can't talk about him yet, but where does that stand? And with Rodrigo and everything that happened, where does that stand for him?
Yeah, Rodrigo's our kicker this spring. I mean, we're going to have competition at that position. We have competition at every single position. That includes fall camp. That includes the spring. So when we go out there to kick, Rod will be the guy kicking. We've got several other kids that will compete with him. And then obviously we got a guy coming in the fall as well. So we'll get a chance to kick. And I think the more situations we can put those guys in, punting and kicking, will be key for us.
Kirby, as far as is there like a moment when you officially wrap up one season and look ahead, and how difficult is that to have your players focus on a clean slate, but also where they can improve?
Yeah, I mean the moment it's wrapped up to me is in the locker room against TCU. It's over in the coach's eyes. We try to make it that way for the players. The new beginning for us was the minute they come back for spring semester. I mean, from the approach of where were we, where are we going, and how are we going to get there. That's the steps that we started in the off-season conditioning program, whether it's gaining weight for you, losing weight for you, better conditioning for you, kicking it further for you, kicking it higher for you. I mean, we have meetings to discuss that with each player so they know where they're headed. And we're kind of on step 2, because I think of step 1 being the off-season conditioning program, step 2 being the opening spring practice, which we're at today.
Coach, just trying to learn a little bit more about, the quarterback situation and kind of how you got a guy who's battle tested and, played 12 ball games for you last year, but you also, like you've said before, you don't want him to think I've got a spot coming back. So how do you kind of balance that and just the competition with a guy that, has so much experience and has done so much thus far?
Well, I don't know that it's hard to balance. I mean, every guy out there has been explained that it does. I mean, you could say Davin and Lorenzo, they got more experience than Jacob Eason, right? Well, they've got DeAndre Walker and Chauncey Manac behind them, who I think are 2 good football players. So those 2 guys are competing with those other 2 guys, regardless of what the stats say or what the SEC Media Day says before the season of what a guy is. That's not the way we look at it as coaches. So it's the same way at the quarterback position. I mean, Jake Fromm's a talented young man who's going to come in here and compete. That's why he's here mid-year. He's here to learn, to compete. He has a really good understanding. He was really coached well in high school and played in a system that was complicated from a scheme standpoint and coverage standpoint. So he comes in ahead of your normal average freshman. So he's going out there with the intent of competing for that job and winning over the team. And that's what we expect him to come out and compete and do.
Defensively, Coach, can you talk a little bit about Roquan? I know he's not going to be able to practice this spring.
Yeah, Roquan won't be available most of the spring. We don't know if we'll get him back or not. He'll be out there, obviously, helping us coach when he's not conditioning. But Roquan had a really good year. Roquan is a kid who works as hard as any kid I've been around when it comes to daily practice habits, weight room practice habits. He's a guy that competes his tail off. And I think he affects others. And I think he's finding his place right now. He's going through a little bit of maybe what Nick went through of, here I am off-season conditioning, and I'm supposed to be a guy that's a leader, but yet I'm not doing it myself. So how do I affect others? And we've had several meetings with him on that, and I think he's doing a nice job of that. But I'm excited to see where he goes and how much he works this spring at the leadership aspect.
Coach, have you decided if Riley Ridley is going to receive any kind of discipline or suspension for his arrest?
Yeah, he'll receive discipline. He'll have internal discipline. And I'll say this: we're very disappointed in his decision and do not condone that behavior. And I think Riley's going to learn a valuable lesson from this mistake.
Coach, with Jacob, what are you looking for from year 1 to year 2 this spring for him to make that jump? And what is something that
you've already seen him do off the field, but then you're going to be looking for on the field?
Well, I ain't getting to see. I mean, obviously, off-season conditioning, I got to see him run, jump, move, do all the physical traits of a quarterback. But I think he's in better shape. I think he's moving around better. I thought as the year went, he got more comfortable being mobile in the pocket. And I saw that in the off-season conditioning program. I'm like, this guy is a little better athlete than we give him credit for. So you got to see some of that. But from a leadership standpoint, he's got to do a better job of communicating in the huddle, doing all the things that a freshman maybe struggled to do. He was trying to get by for himself. He's got to help others now, and I'm starting to see that. I mean, that's something that he feels more comfortable now, having been here a year, than he was obviously in year one. So we'll get to see today. I mean, it's hard to make a lot of these judgments until you get out there on the practice field and you get to be with them.
Kirby, how much does it help the players going into the spring with the sense of normalcy in regard to the coaching staff as opposed to last spring?
Well, I think it helps anytime you've got a little bit of carryover. I think the flip side of that you got to be careful of is, do they get too comfortable? I think that's always the case. I challenge our coaches each year, each day, to change up the drills, to change up the environment, do something different today that they have to respond to, because that's what happens in the game. So we don't want them sitting there being comfortable at all. We want to challenge our players, especially the ones we've got returning, because my biggest fear is a guy thinking that it's okay because I started. I did enough. I'm not hungry. You know, they should be hungry and should be motivated to win games, to win the East, to be the best player they can be. You're motivated by that, not the flip side of I've already played. I kind of have arrived. We don't have anybody on this team that should have arrived.
From what you know of Jeremiah Holloman from recruiting him in high school, what kind of skill set does he bring to the receiving corps? And, early enrollee, I assume you think he might be able to help out?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing he brings is a toughness factor. You know, one of the traits that stuck out on his tape, everybody talks about the catches and the size, but he's physical, you know, and that's the demeanor that we need. A guy out there that's not afraid to go hit you and hatch you up. I really like that about the guy. I think he's going to help us on special teams. He'll have a learning curve to go through to learn the sets and the different plays, but I'm excited about his work habits. He's one of the hardest working kids out there, those mid-year guys, because he doesn't really care what other people think. He doesn't look around at the other guys. He's focused on, I'm going to give you all the effort I can. I mean, we took time this offseason to film finishes. So we've had guys that finished the drill really well, like they ran through the cone really well, and they gave great effort. Then we had guys that, just pulled up a little bit short. And we come in here as a team and we watch and say, this is the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. And we didn't care who it was. Didn't matter who you were or how many games you had played. And repeatedly, JJ showed up on the way to finish because he strains his gut. He's not embarrassed to try hard. And I think when you get that as a player, that's a good trait.
Kirby, just a quick housekeeping question. Since Bryce and Reggie left, has there been any other attrition that's taken place on the team?
Say that again?
Has there been any other attrition on the team since Bryce and Reggie Wilkes left?
No, not since those guys. I mean, we have some injuries that we'll see today that y'all are aware of, most of them, Roquan and Trenton and those guys. But really, that's all we've got so far. Yeah.
Kirby, Sony's had a really nice finish to the season. What did that foretell, do you think, for this season? And at that position, how difficult is it going to be for somebody to stand out because there is so much depth there and so much talent?
Yeah, I thought Sonny did a good job of, he affected that TCU game probably more than anybody between him and Isaiah. I mean, when you get him the ball in space, he tends to make things happen. So finding ways to get Sonny the ball, creative ways to use his ability is important for us. I thought he finished off the year really well. More importantly than just on the gridiron, he impacted our team more off the field than probably anybody. He's not a guy that is afraid to speak out. He's not afraid to challenge others, which I appreciate as a coach. Having been around a lot of players like that in my past, he has that it factor to do that. But yeah, at the running back position, that's certainly, you would think, with Elijah Holyfield, Brian Herrion, even the walk-on, who I think is a good player, Prather Hudson, Christian Payne. I mean, we've got guys there that are good players, but we have to find ways to be able to use them. It's just not that easy to hand them the ball back there and get them through a defensive line if you don't have space to do things.
This is somewhat related, but with Sony and Nick and your outside linebackers, Davin Bellamy and Lorenzo Carr, obviously you have guys that you kind of know what you have. How do you balance, having the risk of them getting out there and playing full out? You don't want to lose those guys in spring practice,
right,
and trying to get the guys ready behind them that you probably know less about.
Yeah, very true. I think as a coach, you're always worried about that. You're saying, okay, I mean, I know some coaches in college football that have the philosophy of if a guy's played, 1,000 snaps in his career, which let's be honest, we got a couple guys that have, is spring going to get them better? I would argue that yes, it is. In a controlled environment, the things you can do when you can reduce risk by doing drill work is obviously separate from 11 on 11. Every guy on our team can get better. We got nobody that can improve, and we preach that to them. We're not going to take guys and say, oh, you sit out of this, you sit out of that because of who you are. I think that can cause angst or problems from within. But we have to be smart as coaches too. To understand that when we're in a tackling environment, some of these guys have been tackled enough times to prove they can carry the ball, or, Lorenzo or Davin's case. I think it's not so much in their case because they don't play the same number of snaps sometimes those other guys do. They rotate. But we'll have to be smart about that, and we meet a long time each day to say who's getting the practice reps. Well, we got some guys behind Lorenzo and Davin that need to get those practice reps. But those guys need their work too, especially from a conditioning standpoint, not so much a scheme standpoint.
Last question.
With only 3 quarterbacks available this spring, how does that affect the reps and the workload for especially your top 2 scholarship guys?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious effect would be, can they handle it? We've tried to have them, independent of us, throwing each day to strengthen their arms to be able to sustain and get through it. I mean, I'll let y'all know because you're going to see it today. Bryce is going to come out there and help us. He's going to be a guy that's there, not from a scheme standpoint, but he's going to help. And he's loyal to this program. He's been very appreciative and handled everything in a first-class manner. So we asked him to help out. He said, absolutely, I'll come out there. But not from a standpoint of taking reps away. We're talking from a standpoint of, can we get enough balls being thrown? So he's going to do that. And those 3 guys are going to get, like I said, they're going to get a lot of work. I mean, most of the time, you'd like to have 5 quarterbacks, but 3 of them getting the reps. So what are the other 2 doing? Most of the time, they're helping facilitate a drill. Well, Bryce is going to do that to stay in shape, to keep himself in shape, and also continue to look at other places. So, no. He's not going to practice. He's going to help. He's going to student coach to be able to be out there and help. So, thank you guys.